Hello my friends, welcome back to the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. So things are getting even more interesting. I think it was just yesterday or the day before, Mexico had a press conference revealing alien mummies that are between 1,000 and 2,000 years old from Peru. And they did scientific testing on them, and scientists are claiming that the bodies are non-human. And there's only 30%, there's 30% of the DNA is unknown. And I suppose that means not associated with any life on Earth. There's a bunch of other things, like there was metals found in the bodies themselves, which, anyway, that's a whole interesting thing. And so we're gonna talk about that. Welcome back to the channel. This is thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. And if you're new to the channel, here on this channel, we do more than just talk. I am gonna talk today. You're welcome to be here and listen. But what I'm really here to do is I'm here to give you techniques, simple spiritual technologies that you can use simply, sometimes just by breathing a certain way or moving your body in a certain way, which will activate energies that are latent and dormant within you. I am somebody who I have been interacting and communicating with higher dimensional extraterrestrials for over a year now, almost on a daily basis. And I'm here to tell you that reality is not at all what you have been taught to believe. And so now that if you would have shown me these pictures of these mummies 2.5 years ago, I would have said it's nonsense, it's completely made up, it's garbage. I wouldn't have bought into any of it. But I'm in a completely different mindset right now. And we are in the most transformative period perhaps in human history, but this month especially, the month of September, as we head up to September 23rd, everything is being revealed. Everything is being transformed. I mean, you may know people that are completely flipping out and losing their minds. You may know people who are getting hit with strange illnesses. You may know people who are super angry. You may know people who are waking up and coming to awarenesses that would have been impossible for them. Everything is completely transforming, and one of the things is the narrative. Things are coming up which are exposing what has really been going on under the surface in our world, in our society, and this is just another one. And we'll talk about that. I'll play for you the recording of somebody reading, translating into English what the scientists said about these mummies. But again, this channel is about giving you specific techniques. We'll talk about that. My books, I've got 2 books written about my contact experience with ETs. You can go to michaelwilliamdenny.com. Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth and Interdimensional Revolution. And I have a subscription service which I take you step by step into the 3 most powerful energy practices which I fuse together, which I call Lightning Qigong, which will give you the ability to handle interacting with higher dimensional beings, and maybe even give you a step up going into this shift, which I haven't talked about in the last couple of videos, but according to my ET friends, the Earth is going to shift up into what people are calling 5D. So you can go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe to the Lightning Qigong. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe whenever you want. It's inexpensive. Courses.thunderwizard.com. Not enough people go there. That has all of the things that I've ever taught, Before you email me and ask me where can I find such and such, go here to courses.thunderwizard.com first. And with that, let's go ahead and get into it. I'll come back to the energy part of it later. So these alien mummies, they've been examined according to Mexican military. They've been examined and tested in many different ways, and they have conclusively decided that these 1,000 to 2,000 year old mummies from Peru, these are specifically from Cusco, Peru, are non-human. And there's only 70% of the DNA of these beings is known to Earth scientists. The other 30%, quote, unknown. So an interesting thing is that there has been an X-ray done on them, and this one here, this apparently has eggs in it. So before this, whatever it was, passed away, it had eggs, and I guess it was, I don't know if it was getting ready to give birth, or if they walk around with these eggs until they're fertilized. I don't know how this particular being species functions, assuming this is all real. But that's pretty interesting evidence right there. Let's see what else. What other pictures do I have here about? We've got, this is from, I can't remember. This one is from a different location, still in Peru. All of these mummies came from Peru, and they're very old. And I just wanted to show you this because this is a larger ET, but look at the feet. Now, if you look at those feet, it may look like this being had huge three-toed claws, but if you look at my hand, if all of the flesh on my hand was gone, you would see my fingers go all the way down to the bone, and it would look like this was a big giant claw. But no, there's all this muscle and stuff here, which is my hand. My fingers are only up here, so that giant three-toed, actually it wouldn't be that big. The toes would be much smaller because there'd be a bunch of flesh surrounding that. And the same thing with her hands. They call it a her. It's big three-fingered hands, but again, if you take probably 2/3 of that and cover it with flesh, then the fingers are going to be a lot smaller. But I put a link in the description which analyzes this one, which is completely different, but there's been scientific analysis, it just hasn't been recognized. Now, what's interesting about all of this is that we just, I think within 24 hours, NASA did a press conference about UFOs. And I watched that, I skimmed through it, and they said literally nothing. Absolutely nothing. You expect NASA to come forward and say, here's the evidence that we have. They basically they did a virtue signaling posturing where they're, we're going to come at this and we need to destigmatize this and we're going to come at it with science, but they said nothing. They literally said nothing. They didn't say ETs exist or don't exist, UFOs exist, don't exist. And right on, just before that, you have this. The Mexican government comes together. Now, it isn't without controversy because this isn't new. These ET mummies from Peru are not new. Dr. Greer had a skeleton, a very small skeleton, which I believe came from Peru, and he, I guess, sent it out for testing, and it came back inconclusive or human or something like that, and so he was debunked. But that was a while ago. That was when the narrative was determined to completely, totally deny the existence of extraterrestrials. And even this press conference in Mexico is being shared on local mainstream news media outlets, your ABC and your CBS, they're talking about it. So if it's on mainstream media, it's because they want you to know about it. So they're doing their typical thing where they're not co-signing it and they're not debunking it. They're sort of, we need more evidence, we need more this and all of that, which what that tells me is that they want you to know that ETs exist. They want you to talk about ETs. They want the average person to be talking about it, but they don't want to come out and say they exist or not because for whatever reason it doesn't serve their purposes. These ETs, you can see they're small. They're tiny. They've got to be like this big, assuming those are actual ETs. They're tiny. So, and they're buried. They were buried in Peru. Some of them, ritually buried in Peru. So, assuming that this is true, it means that these beings were walking among humans in Peru, and they were respected. And as I'm saying this, I'm getting a flood of energy. They were respected enough that they were given this status. They were given the status of being buried with honors. As I'm remembering it, I lived in Southern California, right off the coast of where I lived. You could see Catalina Island. That was the view. You could look out from, you can see Catalina Island. And if I remember correctly, there was some remains dug up on Catalina Island of huge, like 7-foot tall humans with these enormous elongated skulls. I don't know whatever happened to those, but those beings, when I did a little digging and looked into, what information was available, if I remember correctly, there's stories of shamans, like giant shamans that were part of these Native American tribes down in, perhaps on Catalina. So this is just adding to that there may have been a period of time, maybe not in Europe, maybe not in the Middle East, but in the Americas, it looks as though perhaps if these are actual extraterrestrial non-human beings, then it seems as though there was a time when ETs were respected parts of human society. I find that very interesting. All right, so before we go any further, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna defer, and again I put links into the live chat and I put links into the description, and you can go and there's somebody who analyzes the entire thing. Couple of people are analyzing the whole Mexican press conference, but I want to read to you, I'm going to play for you the results of all of the various scientific tests. Bear in mind, this is being done by the Mexican government. This isn't, like Dr. Greer, where he's putting things on and he's bringing his people, which you could, decide isn't real. This is the Mexican government. And the scientists among them are, Mexican naval officers, medical naval officers, and it's being they're officially presenting it. So you have to take that into consideration. So if this is all a bunch of nonsense, then we have to conclude that the Mexican government and military is knowingly bringing some false nonsense to the world. And while I don't put it past the actual the journalist who actually brings forth these things, he's been, he's got a lot of controversy surrounding him. I don't put anything past any person to lie. I don't put anything past a government to lie. But this is just it's a big deal. And so I think we have to take it seriously when you've got people at that level of credentials, scientists, and they're talking about this. I think you have to take it seriously. I was going to say, the thing about these beings, if they exist, they're so small that they don't frighten us. Like, I don't look at that and get frightened. I actually think, oh, how cute. It's a lot different than the supposed alien invasion that had been happening in, various parts of the world, like the ridiculous ET invasion in Las Vegas, where those poor people. I believe that they're telling the truth, but giant 9-foot naked aliens running around trying to steal tractors and jumping on the roof, and that being presented, that's the narrative. That's what they want you. So little tiny cute little gnomes that look like something from a children's movie that has eggs in them, that and buried, supposedly buried with such reverence. That doesn't fit. So I think that's why the mainstream is sort of hands off with it and not really making a commitment, because they want to keep you talking about ETs, and if they can then turn that around and make you frightened of them, they will. But anyway, I'll go ahead and just play that. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. I'll turn the volume up on this. Maybe that's too loud. And then I'll just go ahead and play from that other video, which I've left a link for. This is from Christina Gomez, and you can go and look for her channel, Christina Gomez. You can go look for her. But I'm just going to play the part where she translates what the Mexican doctors had to say.
Nazca Mummies, again, that link will be in the description box by the end of the show. But before we continue, for those that didn't watch the hearing yesterday, I'd like to just kind of give you a summary on what happened. So we had an international panel, people from many parts of the world, and a lot of them were sharing their personal stories, their personal encounters, or stating that our country, whatever country they are coming from, need to be more transparent when it comes to the UFO phenomenon and collecting data. That was the overall theme of this hearing. And then in about 2.5 hours, 3 hours in, Jaime says, I have a surprise for you. And then he's saying, David Grush knows about the bodies, David Grush knows this, David Grush knows that. And I really thought Jaime was hyping for the special guest to be David Grush to walk on stage. Like, that was what I was expecting. And then they have these boxes out, they take off the cloth, right? And then bam, bam, alien bodies, or as they are calling here, non-human entities, because there were tests done on them. There were some very interesting presentations, one of them done by the Mexican naval surgeon with a truly incredible background, and we're going to get into that rather shortly. And he did about, a 15-20 minute presentation.
So, Mexican naval surgeon. I don't know if that has any validity to it or not, but that sounds pretty impressive to me.
On his findings that he spent a year researching, and there were multiple tests that were conducted, and I can actually read it verbatim on the tests that were done. So it says here, actually, let me pull up the image so I can go ahead and read it to you. But here we go. Here's his presentation. He's showing interesting images. And it says here, it is an honor for me to present on such a high platform the results of my analysis derived from the study of the anatomy of these non-human bodies. As a forensic doctor, in collaboration with the biologist Jose de la Cruz Rios, and based on the results of various scientific evidence such as X-rays, computed tomography, three-dimensional reconstructions, microscopic and macroscopic analysis, histography, carbon-14, forensic anthropology, comparative anatomy and DNA analysis, which is the queen of evidence in forensic sciences for comparative studies, I can confirm that these bodies are not related to human beings.
Okay, so what stands out to me again is DNA analysis. I agree. That's the big thing. The rest of it probably go over most of our heads, and I think people could debate about it. But when it comes to DNA, assuming that this is an accurate representation of the DNA, that's a slam dunk for me.
And then he continues into detail on some of the things that they found. For instance, in the abdomen, we have evidence. We have evidence of the presence of 3 eggs that, thanks to the tomography, we are able to show at a millimetric level, which is really interesting here. And then there are images of that. And now I'm just kind of skimming through his speech that he gave. But he says here, finally, I want to point out that the DNA analysis, after having compared with more than 1 million registered species, we found that there is a significant difference between what is known about these bodies.
1 million registered different species on Earth.
These studies were carried out in various high-level institutions, both national and international, and the results gave evidence that 70% of the genetic material coincides with what is known, but there is a difference of 30%. And what is the relevance of this? Well, if the human being compared to primates has a differentiation of less than 5% and compared to bacteria, well, then that's less than 15%. And this could indicate the difference found of more than 30%. And this is something totally outside the parameter and of what can be expected. And this is foreign to what is described and known at the moment by.
All right, so this is important information because she sort of skips over it and she's very generous. It's not her, she's reading from the surgeon, I suppose. But you are not a gorilla and you are not a chimpanzee, right? You're none of those things. You're a human being. Our closest relative on Earth are chimpanzees. We differ from chimpanzees by something like 2%. I think she mentions 5%. I think that's generous, but I've heard 2%. And people have said, if you want to know, how incredibly advanced other species would be in the cosmos, if they were only 2% different from us, that would be how far more advanced they are from us than we are from chimpanzees. So if we're not talking 2%, we're not even talking 5%, we're talking 30% different. Just to give you an example of how potentially far more advanced these beings could possibly be from us. That's just one way to look at it.
Human beings. That was translated, by the way, so it wasn't absolutely perfect, but we get the gist of what is going on here. And if this was just like a casual, like UFO conference, right? People would listen to it, but many would brush it off. But this coming from a naval surgeon speaking in front of very credible people, both on the panel, but also apparently the audience as well, which are said to be congressmen. And he's also putting his credentials on the line because his military rank is lieutenant commander, and his background includes a master's degree in forensic medicine from the Military School of Health graduates of the Mexican Army. He specializes in national security intelligence from the prestigious National Institute of Public Administration. He has a diploma in aerospace medicine awarded by the Mexican Air Force under the Ministry of Defense. He has a diploma in forensic anthropology from the renowned National School of Anthropology and History. He has an aerospace medicine diploma as well. And this is something that if you have those things, on your back, you're not playing around.
I would have to agree with that. I certainly couldn't compete with those kinds of whoops, let's see, I want to put this in the corner here while we talk. I certainly couldn't compete with those kinds of credentials. So again, the world is just continuing to shift and change in such a way that it's pretty unbelievable. And again, let's just, even if you want to discredit Mexico, for whatever reason, we still have mainstream media in the United States, your basic, local news channels, which you can't get more mainstream than that. When you get down, when you go from MSNBC, nightly news, and you go all the way down to, channel so-and-so, whatever, Timbuktu, California, some town in California, and it's gone all the way down the information ladder to them. Those guys, the local news people, are not spending their time doing any major journalistic investigation. They just get facts. They get an email
with what the stories they're supposed to do. They probably get given scripts that are verbatim what you're supposed to say on camera. There's no major news going on unless they're talking about weather or traffic or, you know, a tornado hitting or something like that. Other than that, they're just being told exactly what to say. So that's a good indication. When you know that the local news is talking about this thing, it means that the people at the top of the mainstream media narrative information outlet want you to know this. So what this is going to mean, again, I don't know. I find it incredibly interesting. Incredibly interesting. And again, as I'm talking about it, I feel all of this energy coming through me, which my interpretation of that is that my ET friends are saying, yes, this is true. These are our, you know, these are the bodies of our ancestors, and we had this strong interaction and communication with humans. And what's, again, what the narrative doesn't want you to know. What the narrative does not want you to know is that these beings are completely benign. There is nothing whatsoever dangerous about them. I'm going to repeat myself again. If you ever hear anybody talking about believing or saying that they are an expert and authority on extraterrestrials, and if they mention Anunnakis, you can write them off. You don't, if you want, you can go look at the video that I did yesterday, and I proved to you that the whole Anunnaki thing came from Zecharia Sitchin, who was an armchair at best. If we give him the benefit of the doubt, he was an armchair anthropologist and linguist, and turns out he didn't even have the first clue to know what deities went with what stars in the sky. He was so completely clueless. And this is the guy who's created everything about Anunnakis and ancient aliens since the 70s. So you can, anybody who says that, you can know that they're either repeating something somebody said, or they don't know, or they're an outright liar. Anybody who tells you that aliens are in any way evil, destructive, or even just neutral, those people either are repeating what they've heard, they're confused, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're outright lying to you. I proved to you in my book, Interdimensional Revolution. Go get it. I can't even talk about it here on YouTube, because if I tell you the truth about what alien abductions are, YouTube will cancel my channel. That's how incredibly threatening it is to the narrative. But I can say that abductions are not done by extraterrestrials. They're done by humans posing as ETs. That I can tell you. Anybody who talks about a war, anybody who says that there's a war between good aliens and bad aliens, they either are repeating something that they've heard, they are confused, they're deluded, or they're outright liars. This has been going on since the 70s. This is when Zecharia Sitchin came out with his first book, The 12th Planet, completely misinterpreted the Sumerian language, compared to the Sumerian religion, and concocted this whole Anunnaki thing, which is where you get the reptilians coming in, and now you're conflating truth again. We do have an Illuminati running the world who operate from their reptilian brainstem. But are they reptilians from another planet coming to destroy humans? No. And so what I find interesting about let's just look at it a second here. These mummies didn't come from Sumeria. They didn't come from Europe. They didn't come from China. They didn't come from places where you have all of the empires. And these, are carbon dated to between 1,000 and 2,000 years old. Didn't come from the Roman Empire. So the whole idea that aliens are here working with the Illuminati, the establishment, the powers that be, that's not what's going on. They don't want anything to do with that. Where are they? They're found on a completely other part of the world that hadn't been discovered by, the Western powers. It hadn't been imperialized yet. They're working with people who still operated and lived in their shamanic reality. And even Native Americans, if you go into Native, like the Hopis, for example, they're straight. They tell you, we have a religion that works directly with extraterrestrials. The Kachinas are extraterrestrials. Those Kachina dolls, those are extraterrestrials. And the Hopi prophecies talk about all of this, and where did they get it from? They got it from ETs. So the ETs are trying to help people, but they're not doing what you're being told. They're not teaming up with all of the empires and the armies and the United States government. People want to talk about the United States government working with ETs. Listen, I can't say for 100%. My experience having interacted with ETs, I don't think they would have any interest whatsoever in working with narcissistic psychopaths. They have no interest in that. Their interest is in communicating with you, the average person. And when you do, if you want to, and by the way, as I say in all my videos, don't take my word for anything. That's the problem here. People are taking other people's word for things. They're either taking, David Icke's word for things. They're taking Zachariah Sitchin's word for things, and he didn't have the first clue what he was talking about. People take the word of psychics and take the word of channelers. Well, the channeler said this. There's other people I could throw names around. You find them all over Gaia. You find them all over that. Talk about this, and they talk about the history of the world and Atlantis and other stuff like that. And when I put them through the meter and I listen to them, I can tell that they either don't know what they're talking about or they're lying. ETs are not warring amongst themselves. The human race is not interspersed with some intercontinental war between the Draconians and the Greys versus the Arcturians. None of that is happening. And the way that I know that, and I can speak on that definitively, is because I have interacted with these beings in their dimension. And once you interact with them in their dimension, once you can feel that fifth dimensional, I'm not saying fifth density again, law of one, I didn't talk about that. You can throw out the law of one. Again, people make there are entire groups of people who have based everything they know on ETs on the law of one. What is the law of one? Some woman claimed to channel extraterrestrials. I'm here to tell you that any person can communicate with an extraterrestrial. If you want to call that channeling, go ahead. Am I able to close my eyes and ask, and am I able to get telepathic communication, which I can then verbalize to you? Yes. Does that make me a channeler? No. A channeler is somebody who gives up their mind and their body and allows a being to speak through them. You want to know what that's called? That's called possession. People who get possessed by lower dimensional beings do that. Now, that's not the only way that it happens. In fact, the majority of the time that people are channeling, I know because I tried it for a while. I had a channel where I channeled. And after doing it for a little while, what I found is that most of the time I said some really good stuff that was coming from deep within me, and I wasn't censoring it. My ego wasn't censoring it. And then a good 30% of it was just pure, complete, total fantasy. That's why I stopped that channel. People were coming to me, I was using the same name as my spiritual name. Have Mahadeva channel this question. And I started realizing, oh my God, I've completely gone in the wrong direction. They're not even asking me anymore. Now they're asking some, and what that does is it turns me into something superior to you. And that's a bunch of nonsense. ETs will never do that. They will never take one person and make one person superior to another. And when you listen to somebody who's channeling information. I'm going to use the law of one as an example. You now, whether you realize it or not, you have now decided that that person who's channeling Zohar the Magnificent from the Quapta Verlicht star system, you have now put them on a pedestal, and they're now superior to you, and they know more than you do, and you are now a complete, total, open to be manipulated. And anybody who's successful at this, people who go around channeling ETs and they have a following and they write books, especially if somebody says, I am the channel for this federation of beings, I am the channel for this particular ET. The moment somebody says that, they have put you in a position where they're superior to you and you defer to them. I mean, another example, this is, all you have to do is go watch it. The law of attraction. You know who I'm talking about. Big law of attraction person who channels not one, but multiple ETs. You listen to what that person says. Some of it I think is inaccurate. Some of it is just common sense. But if I come to you as a normal person and I just give you common sense, like maybe you should look before you step off the cliff, you're going to go, yeah, I know that. But if I do this and I say that so-and-so the Magnificent is speaking through me, oh my God, I should look before I fall off the cliff. Oh my God, that's so powerful because life is like that, man. And it's time for us to grow up. Do the work yourself. You can go onto my channel. I got free guided interdimensional meditations where you can communicate with these beings in a higher dimension. If you have, the ability and if you have the desire, they will take you as far as you're willing to go. If you're willing to go through the shamanic initiation I went through, where reality completely blew apart and it almost destroyed me. If you're willing to go that far, they'll take you that far, but they'll never push you beyond what you're willing to do. For some of you, the best that you're going to get for whatever reason, is you might see something in the sky, or you might have this feeling that something loving and powerful is around you, and you might have some awareness about yourself. It's a big sliding scale, but you're supposed to figure it out. That's what was happening with these guys. Down in South America, where people weren't wrapped up in some giant political, at that time, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire taking over the world, and, they're not interested in that. They were going to the people who want to spiritually evolve. And to understand, this is something, again, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't experienced it. But once you get out of the third dimension, there is no separation between you and consciousness. There is no separation between you and God. There is no separation between you and divinity. So these beings here, I have to assume, even though they're 3D physical bodies, what that means to me is that they chose to lower their vibration down into a third dimensional space so that they could walk around in the third dimension. I'm getting a hit, that's what they did. So that's why we have their bodies. But that doesn't mean that they're three-dimensional beings. As a three-dimensional person, it's only understandable that your three-dimensional brain is going to look at those bodies and think that they're three-dimensional beings. I don't think they were. They were probably fifth-dimensional or above beings who chose to lower their vibration so that they could interact with human beings in the third dimension. And this is what the ancients in India talk about. If you've heard of the Sapta Rishis, the 7 Rishis, those were ETs. Their bodies are in deep in the Himalayas, in caves in the Himalayas. They're still there. These beings came to us and taught us all of the spiritual technologies that we have. As I'm saying, I'm getting flooded with energy, which means that I'm on the right track. They taught us runes, for example. I had an ET come to me and help me chant runes. They created the runes. They created mantra. And, right now my right ear is buzzing, and, that means I'm energetically connected to them. And if you go back into the most ancient of Vedic texts, you will find, and I wish I could quote it for you, but I was so surprised when I heard that, it was recent, that one of the rishis, human rishis, might have been Vishvamitra, who I think came up with the most chanted mantra in history, which is the Gayatri mantra, which is a mantra of the sun. And I remember hearing that he heard it in his right ear. He heard the mantra in his right ear and then memorized it. These beings have been teaching us Qigong. Everything that I teach you here, I now know came from higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings. Probably because of the way the movements are. You've seen me do the 5-element practices. They don't look like normal martial arts, but that came from mantis beings. There's a lot of chopping motions like that. That's how a mantis. In fact, the first thing that I learned was to get into this posture. What is that? That's a mantis. And when I did it, first time that I did it, huge amounts of energy went through me. These beings here, I'm willing to bet, were emissaries who were helping humans evolve. And they're not going to go to the kings. They're not going to go to the emperors. They're not going to go to the presidents. They're not going to go to the generals. We think that ETs, if they're going to come to Earth, what they're going to do is they're going to land on the White House lawn and they're going to say, take me to your leader, and they're going to want to talk to the generals, and then the generals are going to sit down, and then the generals will, what are you going to give us? Well, we'll give you this weapon. We'll teach you how to do this. It's not how it happens. These beings are only interested in one thing. They're interested in spiritual evolution. That's the only thing they're interested in. Whatever technologies they have are technologies that allow them to do that. In fact, we're trying to create in the third dimension, we're trying to create something called AI, artificial intelligence. Well, when you get outside of the third dimension, you have access to, if you want to call it the mind of God, you have access to direct access to the quantum field. If you want to call that God, you can. And all of their technology isn't hooked up to AI, it's hooked up to, as one of my students called, OI, original intelligence. It's, even their technologies, even their spaceships are conscious. And they're all loving. Once you get into the realm of consciousness, there's no such thing as violence. There's no such thing as hatred. There's no such thing as fear. That's how I know when people say, how do you know? And again, people make comparisons based on their understanding of 3D. They say, well, I think that there are some bad ETs, and that could, just like here on Earth, there are good and bad people, so there's got to be good and bad ETs. Well, that would be true if they existed in the third dimension, but they don't. That isn't to say that there aren't three-dimensional beings in this, enormous, infinite multiverse. Even in our three-dimensional universe, there's planets that are still at our level or below. So are there going to be three-dimensional beings that we would call extraterrestrials? Yeah. Do they have the ability to come to Earth? No. Because they're thousands, if not millions of light years away. And it's impossible to go faster than the speed of light in the third dimension. If you are in the fifth dimension or above, you have access to the OI. You have access to the quantum field, and you are able to create technology which operates from that, which will be from love, always. And this is, once you get out of the third dimension, like right now we're in the third dimension. We're separate from people who have died, for example. We can't consciously communicate. That's where, psychics do have some value. Sometimes psychics have the ability to communicate with people that have passed. But once you get out of the third dimension, there's no barrier. I can tell you because I've been there. There's no barrier. When you're in the third dimension, you could call the soul of your dead grandmother and she'll show up. You could have a face-to-face conversation with her. When you're in the fifth dimension, you can talk to other higher dimensional beings. You can energetically and psychically connect to beings of any dimension you want, all the way up to what we would consider to be the creator deities. I've communicated with that deity in the same way I would communicate with you if you were sitting on a chair next to me. And the only way I can do that is if I shift into a higher dimension. That's what interdimensional meditation is all about. So if we're going to understand this phenomenon, we have to be willing to get out of our third dimension. And if it were up to me, it's not, but if it were up to me, I would get rid of easily 98% of everything out there claiming to be connected with UFOs, because it's all of it is at best it is conflated. And the biggest problem is people are trying to comprehend fifth dimensional and higher concepts with a 3D brain. You can't do it. This is why the deep state is going to lose. This is why the deep state, even though they have like the technologies where they can look into the future and see different timelines, they're going to fail because they're still operating from the third dimension. How do I know that? Because they know that there is going to come a point where they will lose all of their influence. And they believe that the world will come to an end. Their plan is to go underground or off-world. They already have, in case you didn't know it, human beings already have the technology to go to other planets, not just the moon, but any planet we choose to in our solar system. They're going to either go off planet or they're going to go underground, and they think that the world is going to be destroyed. That's why they're not holding back. That's why things that I can't mention on this channel, there are attacks on human beings I can't talk about, which you know about, you see it in the news every day. That's why they're doing it. They're not trying to cover it up because they're on a time schedule and they're trying to do everything they can, because their plan is once they believe the world has been destroyed, they're going to come out from underground, and those people are left are going to be their slaves. That's their plan. That's what this 923 Thunder Wizard is all about, because they believe sometime around the 23rd of September, which you can see in movies going back decades. The end of the world movies always have September 23rd. It also turns out that in Vedic astrology, September 23rd, there's going to be some major upheaval, which may, and specifically might be the downfall of the United States economy. I don't know. Something major is supposedly going to happen. I don't need that to happen, but looks like it is. So that's what that is. If you guys want to take advantage of that, go to 923.thunderwizard.com. I'm giving away all of my videos and all of my teachings. If after the 23rd we're still here, I'll get rid of it. We'll go back to normal. But anyway, so that's kind of all I have to say about it right now. I just wanted to check in with you guys and talk to you about it. And again, I'll close with this. I really recommend that you don't take anything from anybody else, not even me. Don't believe anything anybody says. Find out for yourself. You can simply go on to Google and type in CE5 protocols. There's no shortage of information out there which will teach you human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials. You can go on to my playlist, the free guided meditations on my channel, the free interdimensional meditations. That will teach you. I'll teach you very simply how to do it right now if you want to do it. It's real simple. Just do some meditation, even if that means just lying down or sitting down and doing deep breathing for 5 minutes. And then simply imagine. You don't have to do it perfectly. Just have the intention that you're imagining yourself coming out of your body and floating up through the ceiling out into the atmosphere. Imagine yourself floating out until you're outside of Earth's orbit and you're looking at Earth. Even if you can't imagine it, just have the intention of being outside of Earth. I can't do it very well. And then when you're out there, you just simply ask, are there any beings of light who love me, who want to communicate with me? If you believe that there are evil aliens, you can put that disclaimer in there. Beings who love me. I don't, because I know that there's no such thing as an evil alien. I know it doesn't exist. So I say, does anybody want to communicate with me? And then imagine yourself coming back into, down back and into your body, and stay in a meditative state. If you want to get out your binoculars and look for them in the sky, you can. If you want to get, like a walkie-talkie or a radio and turn it on, they'll mess with that to let you know that they're coming. Maybe they won't do either of those things. You'll just feel a warm presence come in the room, or you'll start to have some kind of fantasy that you're communicating with some being. This is how it's done. Anybody can do it, and everybody should do it. And every time you do that, you poke a hole out of the third dimension. And the more that you do that, the more the deep state loses control. The more the psychopaths lose their control. And the closer you get to that shift. And I believe that shift is coming. I don't know when. It feels like it's coming real soon. It's not an easy concept for my third dimensional brain to comprehend. I'm not a prophet. I'm not attached to this being true or not. I'm only telling you what I believe based on my experiences. I want you to have that. So go do it yourself. With that, I'll close. As I've said before, I'm not taking any questions from anybody unless you are subscribed to the thunderwizard.com Warrior 90-day lightning qigong or above, which is here. And if I recognize you, I will take your question. Otherwise, I'm not going to take any questions. If you do have questions, put some time and effort to watch my video. Read my books. A good thing, if you're going to ask me questions about ETs, you should probably read my books first before you email me with some kind of question about it. At least have an idea of what it is that I'm teaching. I'll probably answer your questions. Let's see, what else? Anybody here that I recognize? Paige Keller, I don't know if Paige is subscribed or not. Where did I say I post videos about things I can't say on YouTube? Well, I say most of it in this book, Interdimensional Revolution. But you can also go to Rumble. I've got a Thunder Wizard channel on Rumble. I don't even give links to that, because if I give a link to something that's too saucy, YouTube can use that as an excuse to get rid of me. So just go on to Rumble and look for me. I'm also on Odyssey, but most of my stuff I post up on Rumble. You can find it there. That's it, my friends. I love you very much. Exciting times that we live in. If you're going through difficult times, if you're flipping out, I'm going through some challenging experiences. If you're having a hard time with that, you're not alone. Meditate. When the intense feelings come and the anxiety comes, my recommendation is to breathe. Start to meditate. You'll feel the anxiety and then relax into it. It's the way people describe, I've never smoked DMT and I don't recommend you do it, but the way people describe DMT is exactly what it feels like. Take the first hit, you feel kind of woozy. The second hit, you start flipping out. You get anxious and you feel like you're going to die. I shouldn't do this. And your friend says, no, take the third hit. You take the third hit and then you go into another realm and it's peaceful and beautiful and beings come to you and communicate with you. It's exactly what it feels like to me when I'm doing interdimensional meditation and I'm successful. So the energies that are hitting us is energy that's shifting us out of our dimension. And so just like that, you're getting that second hit of DMT, you're full of anxiety and your ego is hanging on. The thing to do is to relax into it. Breathe. Breathe and relax. Do the practices that I teach, the Hul breath, the Huar breath, all of the meditations I teach for free. And the 90-day challenge is specifically designed to take you through a process where your energy will be shifted up to another level. The meditations on that get much more powerful, especially the more that you do them. I'm not kidding when I say it's the most powerful energy and meditative practice in history. I've synthesized it from the most powerful traditions. Some of them have been completely unknown until I revealed them publicly. So if you want help, like I do, I'm just a normal human, I need help, then I recommend that you go to thunderwizard.com, subscribe, and click on the Lightning Qigong and just follow the instructions. And I guarantee you something will happen if you are consistent and you do it regularly and follow my directions. I guarantee you something will happen. You'll find out what. That's it, my friends. I wish you all the best. Thank you for showing up. Erdwick says, do you take former subscribers? Of course. You mean at the Warrior 90 Day? Yeah. I mean, I said you can unsubscribe whenever you want. I can't stop you. You can subscribe and unsubscribe as many times. People do it all the time. So yeah, you want to subscribe again? Go for it. You know where to go. Go to thunderwizard.com and click on the level you want to subscribe at. All right, that's it, my friends. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much. I love you all. And if the Flash don't come and I don't get beamed up to the Starship Enterprise, I will see you very soon. Take care.